I had some like adolescent stuff that was, as I got older and started to understand the body, I realized was super out of the norm. Like I had shingles at 14 or 13. I had chronic hives from 8 until honestly like 32. I started to only eat what felt good. And I
Mhm.
used to tell my parents, like, when I eat a bagel, I feel like blah, 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 blah. When I eat the muffin from that restaurant, I feel blah, 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 blah. And always had this extra sense of like things didn't make me feel right. So I was a collegiate athlete, and in those days, early 2000s, there wasn't a ton of support around college athletes. There wasn't like nutritionists on staff. Now they have, doctors and nutritionists and all kinds of people on staff to guide. It was just like a one size fits all. And I always ended up sick. So I
Mm,
always ended up sick in playoff season, which was very frustrating because I was a 4-year starter.
mm.
Um, and then before that, even I had some like adolescent stuff that was, as I got older and started to understand the body, I realized was super out of the norm. Like I had shingles at 14 or 13. I had chronic hives from 8 until honestly like 32.
Jeez.
So major histamine issues, major adrenal issues. So I started to take this feel good approach as a high schooler. I started to only eat what felt good. And I
Mhm.
used to tell my parents, like, when I eat a bagel, I feel like blah, 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 blah. When I eat the muffin from that restaurant, I feel blah, 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 blah. And so I started to kind of pare back. And eat more of like a fruit, veggie, meat approach. In Ohio, growing up in Ohio, you don't get the Mediterranean and the
Yeah.
seafood and like hummus. You don't get that. You don't even get guacamole. Okay. So you're on a very limited, but I knew I felt good eating nuts and seeds.
Yeah.
And so I was always just trying to like pursue a higher level health when I went to college, and they were like, drink Gatorade, drink Gatorade. I was like, but it doesn't feel good. Like, I don't like how I feel when I drink Gatorade. My teeth feel weird. Like I always had this extra sense of like things didn't make me feel right.
Mhm.
And so after college, of course, I come out with a mass comm degree because my coach told me we don't really have time to have science majors. So we're just going to do like broadcast because you'll be really good at that, which is fine. It's nice to have a broadcast background when you have a media platform.
Yeah.
So
It worked well in hindsight.
it works well. And then I had to pay for my education after that. I pursued nutrition first and foremost. And then also, I was struggling a little bit with an eating disorder.
Yeah.
So, after my identity crisis of lifelong athlete to regular everyday person who still wanted energy to perform on a daily basis, kind of led me down this rabbit hole of control.
Mhm.
So, a little bit more like orthorexia than anything,
Mhm.
mainstream. Um, just controlling everything I ate, how much exercise I did, doing all the wrong exercises, thinking of it from a calories in, calories out standpoint. Like, from a Western society, we just look at numbers way more
Right.
than we are intuitive. And
Yeah.
so I started to like flip the script on myself, like going back to how things made me feel. Like that was
Yeah.
too much running, that was too much exercise. And so when I got my first certification, I actually took it to all the sororities
Yeah.
in Southern California. So I kind of started in Long Beach and then Chapman and then UCI. And I developed this philosophy of like living your everyday life with energy.
Yeah.
And it's still the philosophy that I go by today. And I went and did free talks to all of the sororities that wanted them. I started boot camps for them. I taught them how to grocery shop on budgets and also just like making food without kitchens and all of that stuff because it was where I was struggling. Kind of like you
Yeah.
said, you developed a product for yourself.
Yep.
I developed a program for myself.
That's so cool. What year was that you were doing all that on the college campuses?
2007.
So it was also such a good time to build on social media and everything, right? Because it was just
Yeah.
kinda starting, right? That I
Mhm.
always talk about that in parallel to product companies building on
Mhm.
Instagram, etcetera, because it was just this, like, window of time when,
Mhm.
it was really cool. Not that it's not great now, it's just different. It's way different.
It feels saturated. It feels intimidating now. It
So
wasn't then.
one of the things that you talked about, in the description of your work, which is kind of a buzzword now, and not in a bad way, but there's this idea of root cause, right?
Mhm.
How would you just describe a root cause practitioner, a root cause dietitian versus more of a standard physician?
So I think in conventional, they kind of look at the symptoms and treat the symptoms.
Right.
And in root cause, we look at what could be contributing and causing the symptoms.
Yeah.
And we look at that from a lab perspective. So
Mhm.
obviously, they tell us their symptoms. We always want to know what's going on, like what are the five biggest health complaints. But then we are going to add support that actually target the root rather than the symptom.
Yep.
So it seems like counterintuitive in the culture we grow up in.
So then in your feel good way, obviously shout out the background behind you here. And the feel good philosophy, walk us through that. What is the feel good way? What is the feel good philosophy that you develop?
Yeah, when I developed this, like I said, it was for myself,
Mhm.
but it was also with the credentials and the education that I was
Yeah.
undergoing, Masters of Science and Nutrition and some other certifications, but also for women. So
Mhm.
the focus for my practice has always been on women. I always say that men are the innocent bystanders. They don't even know what they're doing. Like they're just being given the philosophy.
Yeah.
So eating within the hour of waking up,
Mhm.
this helps to reduce the use of cortisol and adrenaline as our energy source. Um, Helps to give us energy throughout the day, sustain our energy, and it helps to burn fat as fuel. So it kind of triggers to our brain, hey, we're awake. It's time to burn fat as fuel. Eating every 3 to 4 hours after that. And I only say 3 to 4 hours because it's actually more like 3 to 5,
Mhm.
but you have to train yourself.
Mhm.
So I think most people are so used to grazing or snacking or not even realizing that there's not a lot of time in between meals that we try to get them to make sure they're eating a full meal. When you're retraining the brain every 3 hours metabolically, the system might start to feel hungry again. Um, by the time you're used to it, 4 to 5 hours, especially closer to menopause, because you told me your demographics. Mine are actually a little bit older than yours.
Yeah.
It's more like 35 to 65. And I always
Yep.
feel like our 55 and up, we're teaching them how to use Zoom and like
Yeah.
click on links and stuff like that, which is great.
Which is
So eat
great.
every eat for within the hour of waking up every 3 to 4 hours. That after that, always combine your macronutrients.
Mhm.
So I think certain macros get flagged as being the villain or the demon when reality is we need all three. So we need a certain amount of carbs, a certain amount of fat, a certain amount of protein. And generally speaking, and what I teach in the feel good philosophy way is 50% carbs, 25% fat, 25% protein. Just keeps it really simple. Also, the measurable visual of that is 50% carbs, 25% protein, and 25% fat. Because remember, fat is twice as nutrient dense as carbs and protein. So it carries more calories per gram. So it looks like less when it's actually more. Eating 5 different colors a day. I remember when I said this, I was like 22 years old, and it kind of was like a Holy Spirit moment,
Yeah.
like 5 different colors a day of fruits and vegetables. Why? The phytochemicals, the phytonutrients, the antioxidants. We need the variety without the pressure of 7 to 9 servings. Like, I just always thought that was really unreasonable.
Right.
Like, I didn't know a single person, unless they were fully vegan, that was getting that. But
Mhm.
when you look at it from a macros perspective and then you add in the colors, it's like doable. And then maybe even adding fiber into the macros perspective and getting, that 30 gram a day target of fiber, it helps to give us like better visuals and understand the purpose of it.
Mhm.
Whereas like 7 to 9 grams, okay, for what? Move your body how it feels good. I don't know what stage of hormones you're in your life stage, but
I am in
as we go,
third trimester of pregnancy,
oh,
so
you are,
crazy,
yes.
crazy like this. That's where I'm at.
So moving your body every single day in your third trimester is intuitive.
Yeah,
You know
exactly.
you need to move around. You know you need to go for walks. You know
Yep.
maybe even can lift a little. So one of the things that I always try to hit home with my community is that we have to feel good from our exercise,
Yep.
just like we do our food. Some so often people are trying to do what so and so did to get really fit rather than doing what their body needs to get fit. So that's a huge part of the philosophy. And then drinking half your body weight in ounces of water. The craziest, freest thing is hydration
Mhm.
that people tend to just overlook.